Okay, so thanks for the welcome and thanks for the introduction. So, as said, my name is Wallace Chigona. I'm from the University of Cape Town Information Systems Department. So it's a big pleasure to be here at the MISA and to be talking to students and also the people online. So I'll be talking about a topic which I'm not very familiar with. So my first reaction when I was asked to talk about this was, I think this is a wrong topic for the audience we are going to talk to. The audience, as I understand, this is a postgraduate symposium. So the audience are students to be talking about students and doing their studies, not about supervision. So I mean, I could have rather, my thought, this talk kind of seems to be targeting at a symposium for supervisors, which they don't exist, which I wished existed. Actually, that's one of the points I'm making in my presentation, that maybe could have had that. But maybe students are involved in this supervision, in their own supervision, in their own journey. Maybe the journey of supervision is not about a supervisor supervising students. Maybe it's an engagement between students and supervisors, right? So maybe it's appropriate to be talking about this. And maybe most of us who are doing postgraduate students studies who one day end up supervising, and it's kind of a good thing to reflect on what's happening. So that's my profile in terms of supervision. So I'm putting this because what I want, for two reasons. One reason is what I'm talking about is more of a reflection. So it's my journey of reflection about what I do, my own practice of supervision. So please join me on this journey as I reflect on what I do, maybe where I do wrong, what I wish I could have been doing. So I think we can get there. Another thing is, I mean, you can look at this picture, you can have different reactions to say, that's a lot, or that's okay, whatever. But what I wanted to say is, what these figures on people's CVs, on universities' websites about people who have graduated, what these figures don't say is a lot, and maybe it's important. So these figures are not saying how many students actually dropped from their PhD. I mean, how many people were working with me and they dropped off from their master's degrees. It's kind of, so this is misleading. There is much more to the business of supervision. I mean, so this is not saying how many people failed. I mean, those who graduated, some of them had to fail and resubmit. That information is not here. So maybe the picture we paint, the information we send out about postgraduate, maybe it's misleading. Maybe we need much more. We need other information about postgraduate journey and supervision. So I don't know. So over the years, I've developed a style of presentation. Right? So what I do is I use my third slide also to give my conclusions. So, and then I continue the presentation. And I do that in case along the way you doze off, then you can just remember I dozed off, but the conclusion was this. And so then the other part doesn't matter that much. So I was trying to come up with conclusions for today, and I couldn't come up with conclusions for today. So that's why the conclusion thing is blank, but maybe we'll see as the journey goes. So when we're talking about postgraduate supervision, I wish I had numbers. I was looking for numbers, but maybe, I mean, I'm doing this for the first time I'm talking about this. Maybe next time I'll have some numbers. But it's clear, if you look at the trends globally, that there is an increasing demand for postgraduate students. So there are more and more postgraduate students or students wanting to do postgraduate studies. their masters, their PhDs, and these have to be supervised. Even in South Africa. So in South Africa, I'm told, I've got 26 public universities. Of those 26, 23 offer PhDs. So I guess the others offering masters as well. So there is demand. There are people wanting to do postgraduate studies. Do we have enough supervisors? I doubt. Right. So I guess we are coming to a picture where you're having more students to be supervised by a small number of supervisors, and we have to operate in that space. So the National Development Plan, so this is the blueprint for the country, includes PhDs as part of the plan, as agenda of the country. So the country says, for us to be developed, we have to be innovative. For us to be innovative, we need more people with PhDs. So these are the story. So they want to increase number of PhDs in universities to 75%. So I think these figures from maybe they're from about 4 years ago. So maybe they're not accurate. They want to produce more than 100 PhDs per year, per million people per year. So that's a lot of people graduating with PhDs every year. I think we are far from that. I think we are about 54 now, or even less than that. So they want to increase number of postgraduates. About 25% of students in the universities must be doing postgraduate. So that's where we are. So as I was thinking about this, I was saying, why do students, PhD, masters, why do they drop out? From my experience, right? From my experience, I think few people fail PhD or masters. I think I've been involved in postgraduate for a long time at UCT and other places. I think I've seen very, very few people who fail PhD or master's dissertation. Many people just drop out, just disappear from the program and never hear from them again. But those who come to a point of submitting and failing PhD or submitting and failing a master's, it's very rare. But a good number drop out, just disappear from the system. So I think maybe just a thought. Why do you think people drop out of PhDs? So can I get, you can talk to your neighbor, you can shout your responses. Why do people drop out of PhDs? Okay, so it says mental health. So is that arising from within the PhD, or they have this and they come in the PhD with that already, this mental health? Okay, so mental health arising maybe triggered from the PhD process? Yes. Like they want you to drop out, like they're saying, please, may you maybe go somewhere else, or
who may not want to engage with the students well, and well, as a student, you just drop out and find your way out.
okay. Yes, I think the mic, you can pass the mic to. I think maybe for the people online, I guess they may need.
Okay. In some cases, because it takes quite a while to finish a PhD, you find that what the student had come up as a hypothesis has been overtaken by events. A lot changes, and therefore the hypothesis becomes irrelevant. It happened to me whilst I was doing my master's.
And you dropped off, or you?
Look, I don't want to tell you because I'm old.
Yes, I think there's a hand there. And then there.
I think from my side, from experience, it's the ratio of supervisors to students, where you find at the end of the day, the supervisor doesn't have time for you because maybe they've been allocated a lot of students. So balancing part, you just end up not getting that time.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, there's a hand there. Yes.
Okay, some students start off as full-time, and if they find a job, a good job that is well paying, we drop out tomorrow.
But Prof, I think another thing will be the reason behind will be, why am I doing the PhD? Some people fail to answer that question.
Yeah.
Then they drop out.
I think on the other hand,
Yes.
sorry. I think on the other hand, I'm also realizing the perception that as a student, my supervisor is basically the person who should teach me what to do. So I'm listening to my supervisor, and I'm either never prepared or I don't want to change once I notice that my supervisor, for example, in this case, I'm not addressing it directly, but I'm glad it was raised to say there is a host of students under one supervisor. But then students are also not adjusting to say, instead of waiting for the supervisor to reach out to me, what if I reach out to the supervisor? And if by any chance the supervisor is not giving me the attention I needed, can I use my cohort of students or fellow postgrads to engage with them and advance myself, so that the next time I'm meeting my supervisor, I've advanced than the person who's waiting for the supervisor to touch or to pull my hand to the progress.
Okay, interesting. Yes, Malib.
Prof, can we take one question online? Poshap
Yes, please.
Telezi.
Yeah. Yes, please.
Posha, you
Thank
can
you.
go ahead.
Thank you and good day, colleagues. In my view, I think sometimes also the imposter syndrome, where people feel like they don't belong. For example, you're trying to research a topic that is unfamiliar and you don't have a community or some sort of input from peers. You don't really know who to talk to or who to go to when you have questions, and you don't know that most of your fellow students are struggling with the same questions, and sometimes all you need is support or reassurance.
Yeah. Yes, Malib. Then after Malib, we go to the back.
Thank you. I also think departments fail to resolve disputes between students and supervisors, where if your supervisor has a specific plan for you and you don't meet it, and they get to a point where an impasse where they can't work with you anymore, because this happened to a colleague of mine, and then you register it with the department, and if the department can't resolve it, because it's always nice to say there's certain procedures, then obviously sometimes it causes the student to either take leave and then they never come back, or they drop out. And a second one that I've personally experienced is the wrong reasons to do a PhD, because I want to be called doctor and respected and whatnot. And when you get there, you're like, hi.
Is it worth it? Yes.
Thank you. So one of the other factors is a lack of career support while they're in the undergrad program. So a lot of them are choosing to go to postgrad based on, I can't find work in my field of study. And without the right support in terms of, well, this is the other aspects where you can cross-skill and look for other opportunities. So we're looking too much at formal qualification versus what are the skills that you have, what are your interests, and how can you bridge that? And also flexibility of work. So what if I do want to start working and actually earn money because I need to start my life financially, but I still want to study? how are we actually making space for people to do that? So it's also those factors in terms of real world applications that looks at the student holistically.
I mean, it's as an instrument, I mean, that they are bigger, that they're human beings. Yes, yes.
Sorry. I think also when you start working on proposals and even when you start working on your thesis, they say, okay, start working on the proposal. And you say, okay, how? And they send you like 3 or 4 other students' proposals and they say, here, like that, but don't copy it. So, and you go, okay, what theme should I have? And each one has got its own layout. It's got its own set of, the way it runs. Just find something between the 3. Just make, and then you send it in, they go, oh, your layout's all wrong. Just a little guidance, don't leave us hanging. You're putting us on a thread over the ocean and there's sharks underneath and you're saying, climb.
Interesting. Yes, there was a hand there and then go to you.
I think another thing that I've realized, it's the procrastination that I'll start. And then all of a sudden time is gone. And then you end up realizing that I'd rather just quit. Because time just flies. You will tell yourself, I'll start this. And all of a sudden, 3 months down the line, and then all of a sudden it's 6 months, and then you just quit.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
I'm going to be a bit controversial, but I think students have become much more entitled and less strong internally. They quit easily, generally speaking. I think I see the generation changing, that they get things too easy. So when you come to the PhD, it's a bit too hard. And they expect the supervisor to do more work, but it's not. It shouldn't be that way.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, so just to answer Prof's controversial statement there, Prof, if you don't mind,
Yeah,
I think
please.
we need to really understand what students are grappling with in their current reality. There's high mental health challenges that they're facing. And like one of the other ladies was saying, they need more support. And the challenge is that as academics, you don't have time for that support. So we are missing support structures that are helping the individual to actually follow through. Perhaps they would be great in that role, but without the right support, they will fall through the net. So lack of support, lack of structures, I think, is also part of it. We can't just say that the Generation Zs are lazy. I think
So
that's
structures within the university.
yes, and also more support to help them to know how to actually follow through. I love that idea of the peer group support. There are actually solutions that are hiding inside our spaces. We just have to allow ourselves space to actually connect the dots and see how can we really support the students and, like you said, see them as humans.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think you can have the slides again. If I can. So that's an interesting discussion. It's, so I think I had some kind of almost similar or phrase different from what you've said. So it's lifestyle mismatch. So I think work-life balance. I mean, most students in South Africa, for example, I mean, like in our department, the majority are working full-time and they're doing PhD. The majority of students in South Africa are not very young, so they're coming in, they've got families, they've got kids. They have to balance and do this. Funding, I think many people mentioned funding as a big issue. So therefore, we start working. And the work demand and opportunities. You begin sort of your PhD or master's, then there's a big job at Sanlam. What do? I mean, in the middle of your studies, there's a new opportunity to change. I mean, you move from Cape Town to Joburg, and it's different now. You can't. Another issue is maybe PhD sounds fun, or master sounds like it's this cool thing. And then maybe you saw it on TV, you saw these cool guys. But I mean, when you're on the ground, you're like, okay, it's boring. It's not actually, you feel like, is it worth it? It's for me to be doing this. It's a longer process, and that mismatch, then people. I think maybe just the idea of, then after this, what will happen next? I'll become a lecturer. It seems, I mean, actually, sort of maybe they're not even that happy when you look at them close enough on campus. They don't looking that cool. So maybe it's not what I want to become after all. So it can. But I think another thing which we are scared of talking about, maybe some of us are not gifted enough for that qualification. It's kind of, it's almost like a taboo thing to say that maybe you're not intelligent enough for this yet. Maybe it's a wrong program, right? Maybe if you did computer science instead of information systems, maybe that's where your strength is. Maybe your grades are supposed to end at first degree. It's a possibility. So sometimes because we think PhD is cool, master's is cool, we go into these programs and it's torture for ourselves, for the supervisors, for the system. So maybe accepting that maybe this is not my path. Maybe my path is something else. Maybe I could do well as a professional software developer and I could thrive in that space. I think that's, I think the demand for supervisors is great. So we are looking for more and more supervisors. I mean, there are more students coming to the system. But I think most of us as supervisors, we're not trained to be a supervisor. I mean, I've been supervising, I don't know, for a long time. I was never trained. Oh, I did a 3-day workshop at UCT on supervision. Right. So actually, what I do is what I saw my supervisor doing on me, and maybe what I see my colleagues doing. So maybe if I was messed up by my supervisor, I push the messing up on my students, and that continues for generation after generations. So maybe we need something else. Maybe we need training for supervisors. There should be training somewhere. I want to think so. Yeah, they should be. So it's interesting because, like here at NEMISA, I think almost every time they run it, they have a postgraduate symposium. Many conferences are called postgraduate symposium. I think I've never seen a supervisor symposium. Maybe we need to have that kind of engagement to improve the practice of supervision. I need to hear what other people are doing. I need to learn and to reflect on what other people are doing. So I think maybe some of the issues I think we're talking about here could be addressed in that kind of training. But, so maybe when talking about transformation, transforming the supervision space, maybe we're talking about these things. I was looking for research. So these people have done, I think there are 2-3 papers on, so they're from Belgium. Right. So the interesting thing is about 50% of, I mean, globally, I think it's about 50% or more of people who begin their PhDs drop out. The number is that high. So I mean, if you feel like dropping out, I mean, you're not alone. So you feel comfortable. You're not the first one. This is normal. But interestingly, though, what I also saw this week was 70% of love relationships also fail. So it's almost like similar figures, right? So failing a PhD, failing in a love relationship, it's the same thing. It's a similar thing. So I think if you feel like quitting sometimes, I think you're okay. It's okay. So I looked at this diagram from their paper. So this diagram, my reading of this diagram is, so if you look at the right-hand side, right, there's a beginning. There's people going into a PhD program, in a PhD program, right? And then they're tracking them over time, over 8 years. So at the top there are people who are dropping out, right? So all those people drop out. I think a few of them will succeed, or some of them will succeed to get their PhD. Right, so the ones in the middle are still doing their PhD so many years later. So I thought this was interesting diagram. So this was in Belgium, not in South Africa, and I thought this was interesting. It's interesting that the number of dropouts is big. And actually, I kind of kept thinking, somebody dropped out in year 8? I mean, why couldn't they drop out earlier? why did they hang on? And then, I mean, they hung on for 8 years and then they dropped out. I mean, they paid fees maybe for those years. They had to forego family meetings to say, oh no, I can't come to the wedding, I can't come to the engagement, I'm doing my PhD. And 8 years later, they drop out. I mean, they could have dropped out in year 2 and have their lives. So I think one thing I'm thinking about transforming the space is if people can drop out, if people have to drop out, and they will drop out. I mean, if they can drop out early, in year 1, say, I think I'm done with this PhD thing, I can't handle it, I'm going. Instead of them hang on for that long, I don't know. So maybe it's issues I think we're talking about, I think Malebo raised about mental health. Maybe they couldn't discern. Maybe things came up along the way. Could have done something to have avoided this. We could do something to increase the number of people succeeding, maybe succeeding early. So someone took 8 years to graduate, maybe those guys are still continuing, maybe they'll graduate in year 10. Is it worth it? Maybe, I mean, if you could shift and have them graduate in year 5, in year 3, maybe that could have been better off. So just think about that, and how does this tie to transforming the space of supervision? So this is a lot of information, but I thought if you could pause and, so this again, the Belgium study. So just looking at who's likely to succeed in Belgium at that time. So if you look at gender, male were slightly more likely than females to complete their PhD. Yeah, so I guess, I mean, I don't know the figures in South Africa. I would assume they could be similar, or maybe even be a bigger disparity in there. Then there was the marital status. Right? Married males were more likely than single males to finish. So, yeah, I mean, you can think about that. Okay, so I think somewhere, I think I'm looking at it wrong. Okay. So then the other issue was the nationalities, that the nationals were more likely to finish than the foreigners. The younger people were more likely to finish than the older people. So that's interesting. So the other one is about grades. The ones who come with high grades are likely to succeed than the ones who come with lower grades. Seems obvious thing. The people who came like through the same university and continue at the same university were more likely to graduate early than the ones who had changed universities. Yeah, I think then people changed fields. Makes sense that the ones who remain in the field would finish early. Any thoughts around this? Any similarities? Any things which don't make sense? I think, of course, this those with funding are likely to graduate than those who came with no funding. Reactions, thoughts? Yes. That's an interesting question about prospects of employment. I think there's an article that in South Africa, actually, the employment for people with PhDs was lower. So maybe people get disillusioned to say, what if I finish and then, because I think the trend, like in South Africa, it's different maybe from other countries, is that if you get a PhD, then you become an academic. So I mean, like if there are no openings we are seeing around, then it gets a bit not exciting. But in other countries, or maybe we're moving towards there, when people with PhDs can work elsewhere, if I can work at telecom as CEO or as, whatever manager, then I think either those prospects of people with PhDs being marketable or people with masters being marketable, I guess maybe people will do postgraduate. You see this with, I don't know, but at UCT in our department, with honors degree. Right? So at some point, we saw like students wanting to leave after the first degree, wanting to not doing the honors year. But more and more, the space of information systems, people with honors are hired easier and they get more money. So we're seeing the demand of people wanting to do honors because they can see the benefits immediately. I do honors, I'll start with a higher salary. I do honors, I'll get a job easier. If I did a PhD, okay, so if I had a master's, I would earn, don't know, so much. If I get a PhD, I think my salary wouldn't be much different. It would be the same. But that's my intuition. So maybe it's not attractive when you begin doing it and then you start thinking, what the hell, why am I doing this? When it's tougher, then you kind of say, maybe I just quit. So it's possible, yeah. Other reflections?
Prof, just a quick one. I know
Yes.
this will differ from university to the next.
I can see who's,
It's me here.
yes, okay, yes.
Okay, so you're advising that if a person is going to drop out, they better do it earlier.
Yeah, so I'm thinking of that from both the view of the student. So as a student, if I have to drop out in year 8, I've wasted 8 years.
But now, you see, I'm with UP,
Yes.
right? So they give me 3 years to finish. After that, I need to motivate, isn't it? And depending whether they allow me or whatever reason, they can let me register again next year or not. So now, is it possible that a person can take 8 years to complete? And also, let's say, during the surviving stage, I cannot take it anymore. Can I take a gap year and then continue the next year?
So I think maybe you're right about university policies and how much universities are now willing to bend their own rules to, because I mean, SRC is strong. If you try to kick a student out, the students' union will be on you. So investors are bending more and more. At UCT, the way I understand the rules is that actually for PhD, there's no longer a maximum number of years for you to do a PhD. You can be there forever. So in the past, there was, I think there was a 4-year, 5-year cap, but I think it's been either ignored or it's been taken off. So now it works based on the MOU, right? So at the end of the year, my boss will ask me about my students to say, did they perform according to the MOU, what we had agreed at the beginning of the year? And if I say, yes, they did, then they can come again next year, right? So if I say, no, they didn't, then they can say, okay, now let's talk. Then maybe you can take the student out of the system. So I think, so it's a difficult thing. It's a difficult thing because you may argue that that process is pro-transformation, or we could argue that actually it's much more torture to a student to have the hope of coming again and coming again, because I think maybe this year will work out. I mean, like you see what happens with most students. January, February now, they're coming with enthusiasm, they register, and then by May, June, the energy is gone, and then they'll come again. So I don't know whether we are helping them. But again, from maybe transformation from university or a broader perspective, even in helping the supervisor. So if you're my student for 8 years, you are blocking a space of another student. I cannot have another student because I got you. So another student who is capable cannot enter the university because now we have reached number of students in the university. So maybe for the sake of transforming this space, if we could allow students to fail first and leave, we could create space for other. It sounds mean, but maybe that's what we need. Yes.
Professor,
Yes.
I'd like you to define what you mean by transformation. All right? Right? Before we
Yes.
go there, I'm going to give you my misinformed opinion on the word transformation. Right? I believe transformation in the PhD space in particular is how we transform the thinking of our candidate. Now, why is it the thinking of the candidate? The question is, what is the currency of a PhD? I argue the currency of a PhD is 2 years. Only 2. So they should try and finish the degree in 3 years. After that, it's not worth the paper it is printed on. Nah? Earlier on, Professor Ochara stood over there very passionately and spoke about the literature review. That is the curse and the bane of the supervisor's life. Because you must read the literature review 8 years down the line and it means nothing. And the supervisor actually has mental health care issues to worry about. Because your boss and my boss comes and asks us, why isn't this candidate not completing? Yeah. Because their work has not reached that level at which it shows that they've transformed their thinking, because it's 8 years old. And it's a problem. There is this unrealistic expectation, and I see your university is doing it, and so is my university, is that the students can be registered for infinitum, and they just stay in the system, and stay in the system, and stay in the system, but they never produce anything. And when you ask why you're not producing, every finger points at everybody else except the student themselves. And that's concerning. That indicates to me that they're not transforming their thinking. They should say, I should get into the system as quickly as possible and get out as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think I'll come to the issue of transformation, but the way I look at transformation, I look at it in 2 ways. So I was aware that we are talking about transformation in South Africa, and the word is one of the most used words in South Africa, and it's a loaded word. So I looked at transformation from that perspective of being inclusive. And so we give people a chance to do PhD, regardless of other differences we have, gender, race, sexuality, and other things that people have a chance. But again, if you look at transformation from the perspective of maybe Bourdieu and those other people, where it's about change, almost like a kind of critical research, to say actually who's being transformed. The student must be transformed. The supervisor must be transformed through the process. At the end of the process, I should feel I'm different. I should change my practice. I should change my views of things through the process of supervision. The university itself as a system must be transformed to, I think maybe the point she was raising, that maybe there are need for other systems to support students. Maybe there are all those components which have to reflect on what we are doing and adapt, not to deny people a chance of graduating who could have graduated. Yes, Malebo.
Thank you, Prof. I think it's a question. What happens in the instance where after 5 years, you realize you have a different interest, right? And maybe you're afraid to talk to your supervisor, or you're afraid for your own self because you ask yourself, I've been here for 5 years, why do I want to change course now? Because now I have to start from the beginning. Because what I see is when we register, when we get on, we are pushed to get the proposal in the first year. So you choose something that you think you're interested in. You just want to get into the system. You want to be called a candidate. And 3 years, 4 years, you realize this is not your thing. But you don't want to leave because you know that you can do it. And your supervisor knows that you are capable. You are intellectually capable. But this is no longer your interest. What kind of support exists from the supervisor, or what can you advise the candidate or the student when they get to that place, maybe after 5 years, and you say, I want to start from scratch? Is that something that's plausible?
Yeah, so I think maybe it's sort of linked to the point she was raising. So in theory, if you did your PhD, as Prof. Singh was saying, if you did your PhD in 2 years, I think the interest is still on the topic. The longer you take, the likelier that the interest would dwindle in you as a candidate. So then what happens? Do you begin a new topic? And so on. So I don't have an answer. But in the same vein, as a supervisor, I begin working with a student on a topic. Today I'm interested. You come to me, I want to work on this topic. I'm looking at 4IR. And it's a hot topic. I'm excited. I want to research on this as a supervisor. 5 years down the line, you're still doing the topic. I've lost interest in your topic. I don't care about the topic anymore. I just want you out of the system. And this happens a lot. That supervisors, along the way, they lose interest in the topic. So now it's just routine. Now let me get the student out of the system. Another point, I think, which was in the later slide, but I can bring it up now. It's about the reward system, the way the system is designed, I guess globally. In South Africa, when you graduate with your PhD, right? When you get your PhD, the university is given, I think, about over 500,000 rands per student graduating. It's about 400, 500, I'm not sure about the figures, but it's a figure equivalent to what the university gets for one journal paper. So like when you publish, the university gets money. For a PhD, the university gets 4 times a journal paper money. So it's big money. It's big reputation. So when kind of meaning like about the ranking of the universities, it's about people graduating. So the university wants, okay, the government wants you to graduate. They want that number. The university wants you to graduate. And they do whatever they can for you to graduate. My career depends on you graduating. So we supervise, okay, we love supervising, but it's my career depends on you graduating. So I'm invested in this process, sometimes more than you're invested in this process. I need this. I just need this to mean for my next promotion. I just need for me to go to the next rank. End of the year, my boss calls me and says, okay, so this year, how many students have you graduated? 0. Again? What have you been doing? So as a supervisor, I'm under pressure. Right. So if you came to me 5 years later, oh, now I want to change a topic. I want to start again. I've invested 5 years of my life in this. I think maybe this year now I'm going to submit and then you're changing your topic. So there are those dynamics of the system. I'm told, so I'm not sure, but I think maybe others could confirm. That money which comes from the government, right, on PhD graduation, I think the money is only given if you graduate within a given time. I think it's 4 or 5 years. So the longer you stay, okay, the university now comes to a point where they've lost their money they could have earned on you. So you are a currency and finish quickly so that you get that money. But I guess the point is, maybe I think it's a challenge because there are other stakeholders interested in you finishing today. So if you want to change a topic, then you have to start again. And maybe like if you're at UP where you're given maximum number of years, then the years are ticking. If you begin again, they'll kick you out of the system. So there are those dynamics. But the point you are raising about topics, about choosing a topic and choosing a supervisor at the beginning are true and are real. I mean, a student comes into a system, they want to do a PhD. They don't have a topic, so just looking for anything for them to register. That's a challenge. I really don't know. So, how long do I have? 10 minutes. Okay. So I was in trying to think about this transformation thing. I thought about I should find a slide which talks about stages of a PhD journey. I've seen the slides before, the image. So I found this, and then I thought, no, I think this one is not a nice one. It's talking about dying. So I thought I think the minister will not be happy with me talking about dying. So I ignored this one and I found a better one, which is a bit much cleaner, minister kind of government like him. So I thought this is an interesting thing to think about the PhD or master's journey, or if you're doing a master's or doing your PhD, that we all come into the process excited. Meaning, kind of go to me that offer. You have been accepted at University of Pretoria for a PhD in whatever. You feel like, yes, finally, I'm a PhD graduate. Like it's on your status, you're doing PhD. You're excited. You want to meet your supervisor. You want to do a PhD. Now they say, send us your proposal. And then they say, no, this is not good enough. Can you have a proper proposal with a theoretical framework? And when I was like, I don't even know what a framework is. Or, I mean, I think I got no topic. I think my topic is not topic enough. So you come to a point where you're now getting, you know what a PhD is, and you know I'm far from that. So I think that's where now you are informed pessimism. So you go down, and I think you can come to a point of crisis. You may quit. Or I think then you rise from there. You have new learnings, you get the energy, and you go on. So I think that's the journey. So I guess maybe for a supervisor, you have to be aware of that and be aware of how you can support a student going through those different phases of their masters, of their PhD. So I think you have to be. So when I looked at that cave, I thought, oh, this cave looks familiar with other caves, which you see. So I think the other cave is the cave of falling in love. It's almost similar cave, like you're excited, it's honeymoon, and then you go through, you see, like, I mean, well, so this is the right guy. I think this is not the guy also. And you can rise from there and go. So I think it's about managing. You as a student, or you as a lover, knowing the phase you are and how to manage those phases to survive. The cave below there, it's the cultural shock cave, most similar shape. So it's when like you go into a new country or a new perspective. Wow, you're excited, and then you go into shock, and then eventually you recover. So the point is, I think all the stakeholders, the students, the supervisors, and should be aware of this and should think about transformation in all those points. So yeah, to the point, what is transformation? Then I thought, what is a space? What is a supervision space? I wasn't sure what supervision space was. So in my thinking, I thought, okay, this space is multiple spaces. If you look, or multiple fields, as other people would call them. So at one level, it's a macro level where me as supervisor and the student are engaging. So this space, this interaction, how should this be transformed so that it's working? At maybe the middle level where the university policies and university structures, again, that we have to think about how can we transform that space. At a national level, we're talking about the policy of subsidy. I mean, how is it affecting people down the line? Funding, maybe it's a national issue level. How would we fund students doing postgraduate studies so that people who are capable, but maybe have got no funding? So funding is critical because you have a student coming to university. They want to study ICTs and agriculture. They're passionate about ICTs and agriculture. They come to UCT, say, okay, I think that's fine. We can do that topic. We can give you a supervisor. But then they hear that another supervisor is doing something different. He's doing cybersecurity. It's got funding. My passion is on ICTs and agriculture. There's no money, but there's cybersecurity, which I got no idea what it is. But there's money. Then students jump onto a topic which they got no idea because there's money. And the result is suffering, and for both the student and the supervisor. So I think if we had much more broader funding policies, I don't know how they look like. Maybe that could change some of these stories. So I think I've talked about this, that if students have to fail, they have to fail. If they can fail fast. I don't know whether it's a good idea, but if people can fail fast and go and do something else. I mean, sometimes it's sometimes I could be in the wrong department. So maybe I'm at WITS and I'm struggling. Maybe WITS is not for me. Maybe I should go to Stellenbosch. Maybe there's a different culture. So sometimes I think if you let them out quickly, they can decide. So maybe it's about providing counseling to say, are you sure you want to be at WITS? Have you checked at UJ? Maybe their programs and the nature of their PhD is similar. Yeah, maybe the other way around. Yes.
By a government entity with a mandate, right?
Yeah.
There is a particular reason why they want to be, the team from NEMISA want to create thought leadership on research on certain topics. Now, I'm listening to the discussion. It's good. It's about research, students, and their supervisors. And I'm seeing a missing link. Maybe it is maybe at the level where we discuss further, or the supervisors workshop does come, as you were suggesting, supervisors colloquium. The missing link here is the person, or no, is the entity that has actually requested or is funding the researches. Let me explain further. Each time as a supervisor, you are looking at a proposal, you are looking at a body of, a path towards a body of knowledge that must be used to solve an existing problem or a problem that is to come in future, right? But if it's just the two of you locked in the university without involving the context, then we are likely to have situations where 3 years down the line, one is not interested. 4 years down the line, one is saying, please change the topic.
Yeah.
You know, remember, we, as South Africans, fortunately, you are the one who projected the slide of the NS, the National Skills Plan. The national, the NS, the national plan, yes. It says a lot about the researches, the number of graduates in the universities. It is not necessarily about what comes out of the academic exercise. Is the real body of knowledge that is required to solve a particular problem. So I'm saying, in the context of us discussing the supervisor, the student, their likes, their fears, their what, let us always bear in mind that the particular interest is out there. So there is a third missing link. Talking about graduates, doctoral graduates, and employability, is that disjuncture between what is researched at universities and what skills are needed by the economy. So I'm saying that third missing link must be featured into the debate between the supervisor and the supervisee. Because at the end of the day, if both you can answer, where does this fit in at the end of the day? where, which problem, which community, societal problem is going, my research as a student is going to solve. It can actually make the student to have more impetus, knowing that at the end of this whole exercise, be it 5 years or 6 years, some out there is, I mean, it will bring a solution.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for that. It's okay. That's very important. So maybe I mean it's part of the point where I get disillusioned about my research. Say, where am I going with this research? If you have got much more engagement with the consumers of our research, if our research are based on sometimes on practical needs, so I know there is somebody going to consume. I'm working with Siemens in Johannesburg, and they know what I'm doing, and they are feeding into this. So maybe part of the ecosystem of supervision is to involve potential consumers, government, and other people in maybe thinking about these topics. It will be much more helpful for the students and for the supervisors. So I have other slides which I didn't come to, which is actually. So I think we have done the discussion already. I think somebody at the moment doesn't like me anymore because I've overstayed my welcome. So I think let me end my presentation here. I think it's a topic we need to discuss more. I think we need to have supervisor training, supervisor symposium where we can talk about this. So thanks a lot for the discussion and for the opportunity. Thanks.